welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I am Melissa.
I am Luke.
And we are here discussing Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapter number 29, The Dream. This chapter was only 17 pages long. It was super short compared to normal. And it's 2.32% of the book. Benj, what just happened?
After a long night of discussing what happened near the forest, Hermione, Harry, and Ron head to the owlery to send Sirius a letter. They overhear Fred and George discussing blackmail, but neither group will spill the beans about what they're up to. Later that morning, the trio head to Professor Moody's room, who reports Crouch wasn't on the Marauders' map, which was odd because he was in no shape to move anywhere quickly, at least under his own power. Harry gets a letter back from Sirius telling him to be careful because there's someone in the school who's obviously dangerous, and Harry needs to focus on studying for the third task, which he does. A week later, in divination, due to the warm air, perfume smell, and the buzz from a nearby bug, Harry falls asleep in class. He dreams of flying on an owl into a house in which Voldemort is berating Wormtail for his mistakes. Voldemort tells him that he is dead and foretells soon of Harry Potter being killed and is ready to be fed to Nagini. In punishment, Voldemort uses the Cruciatus curse on Wormtail, causing Harry to wake up suddenly in class, screaming and holding his scar. Harry proceeds to the headmaster's office where he overhears Dumbledore speaking to Cornelius Fudge about Mr. Crouch's disappearance. Moody tells them to wrap it up because Potter's waiting outside the door.
All right, so Luke, did you notice any new characters in this chapter?
I did not. I think every character we saw, every character that was referenced, we've either met or have heard of before. I didn't see anything new, did you?
No, I didn't see anybody new or anywhere new. We didn't go anywhere new. We didn't see anything new. Even the dream was in a place we've been. I
Right.
think maybe, unless it was in Crouch's house, which we've never been at.
Yeah.
I don't know. The location of the dream was questionable.
Yeah, I would say that is potentially, I'll just put it in location of dream, question mark? It's just ambiguous is what it is.
Well, because it could either be the Riddle house or
Right.
it could be Crouch's house. Because I always got the impression, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always assumed it was the Riddle House, but I think it's a reasonable assumption that it could be somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do have some magicabulary in this chapter. What did you find new in this chapter?
So we have the impediment curse, which stops things.
Stops or slows down, yeah.
And then the banishing spell, which throws them off.
Yeah. We don't get too much of a description on them, but those are two new ones, at least. So there's that.
Is that... So the Banishing Charm, is that different than when they were practicing the opposite of the Summoning Charm?
I don't know. So it basically says, well, you keep missing the cushions, don't you? Said Hermione impatiently, rearranging the pile of cushions they had used for the banishing spell, which Flitwick had left in the cabinet. So, yes, it is the same as the reverse summoning, which I guess we did see that before.
I wonder if we named it then.
I would need to go back and look. I don't remember. I'll just do a quick search for the word banishing. And, see. You are here. She banished a cushion. Yeah, no, it was used in... The actual term was used in chapter 26, the second task. So hopefully you and Abby got it when I was out.
I was going to say, I feel like we already talked about that one.
Okay, good. I was like, I'm sure we did, but I didn't remember it, and it's not highlighted in my Kindle book, which means I wasn't on that episode. This makes more sense why I was like, I don't know.
That explains it. All right.
All right.
And guess what else we have?
I'd assume we have an illustration.
We have an illustration. I almost forgot. I almost jumped.
Did you?
To the next. So, but luckily I have it open.
Yeah. So I have it pulled up on our screen as well, covering your face, unfortunately.
It's fine.
But it looks like we have a hill and a house behind a hill, and Harry riding a giant owl.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm yawning. So that is odd. I mean, I get that's maybe the dream part of it. He was riding on the back of an eagle owl soaring through the clear blue sky toward an old ivy-covered house set high on a hillside.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's absolutely the dream sequence. I don't know how often he's ridden owls around, but
I don't think you can ride an owl.
not easily. I'm not gonna say something's impossible, but be humane to your local owls. Don't ride your local owls. Treat them kindly, and only ride them if they let you. Ask for permission, I think, is the main takeaway.
There you go.
That's
Oh my gosh.
it's an interesting one. It's one of those the illustration's one of those action scenes that we get every once in a while, and I don't know. What are your overall thoughts? Do you like it? Do you think it's whatever?
I mean, the title of the chapter is The Dream. The illustration illustrates a scene from the dream. Other than that, not a lot else happens in the story, other than maybe the passing out in the divination class. So that might be the most interesting moment, when you're trying to think about what you're going to draw.
I think they could have done Ron getting stunned, or practicing that spell. Which
you could have, or Harry standing at the the giant stone gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office.
True.
Done that one, although they may have already done that.
Or in the Owlery with the twins. I think there could have been a standoff between those five. Right. We'll chat about that as we go.
All right. All right, so Luke, let's go ahead and jump into some of your thoughts here. What was one of your first takeaways from this chapter?
So the scene, this chapter kind of opens up with a bit of I want to call it the fallout, the Harry explaining himself to his friends about what happened the night before, because he's told at the end of last chapter by Dumbledore, just go straight back to your room, right? Don't send any letters, just go straight back, and he does that. And so now this is, I guess, the morning after, and Hermione and Ron are like, dude, what is going on? And
right.
Harry's clearly already kind of gone through all of this information before, and he's like, I've already told you, it was really crazy. Crouch was kind of out of his mind, and then was present, and was kind of out of his mind in the present too, but it was confusing, and I don't know, it's we also get the letter from Sirius in this portion of it too, correct? Kind of towards the beginning here.
So the letter from Sirius is in response the next day.
Okay. So they do send the letter. That's right. That's okay. I've jumped ahead. But they decide, we should write to Sirius, and I thought it was interesting that they start questioning Snape again. It's been a little while since we've had good reason to be like, well, why was Snape doing sinister seeming things? What are your thoughts on their minds, at least Ron's and Harry being open to Snape being not such a good guy?
Okay, I agree. Snape is not a good guy. I'm not discounting that. But they always jump to that conclusion.
Usually with relevant...
But it's never him. It's never him. He has proven, it's never him.
Let's not use the word proven. Let's just say it hasn't been him yet.
Okay, well, it hasn't been him yet. I mean, it's pretty consistently not him. So maybe they need to, back off a tad and look at the other possible suspects. Not that there necessarily are any other suspects, but, chill out, man.
I mean, I guess it's so blatant in Harry's perspective of why was he holding me up? I mean, it always comes back to Snape was being a real bully at an awful time, which is essentially all the time. But it's really in your face when even when Harry was talking to him, Harry could sense that Snape was enjoying holding him up. And so it's a fairly logical jump to be like, well, is he involved? I know it's been shown over and over again to this point, at least once, that Snape did a good thing to help Harry, but he's also just been awful.
Okay, but I think that's the point. He's just consistently awful. Harry's like, well, why would he hold me up? Harry's perspective is, I have this important thing that I have to talk to Dumbledore about. Snape must be holding me up for a reason to prevent me from doing that. Where I think Snape would have done that regardless of the situation. Let's say it wasn't that important, or Snape would have done the exact same thing. I Dumbledore. No, I think no matter what situation Harry would have wanted to talk to Dumbledore for, Snape would have, one, tried to prevent him, because why are their kids needing to talk to the headmaster? You know what? You're probably fine, so whatever. Two, Snape will always have enjoy telling Harry no and being rude to him. That's just something we know he enjoys. I don't think there's any sinister ulterior motives to Snape being a jerk to Harry other than Snape just enjoying being a jerk to Harry because he's consistent in that. It's not like he was being extra jerky.
Yeah, and in truth, it was really just Ron that says maybe he didn't want you to get there, and it's really Ron. Right. And Harry's just like, God, what a jerk. And Ron's the one that kind of brings up the conspiracy theory again, which makes sense.
It makes sense because they are realizing that there's this bigger thing going on and he's preventing it, therefore he might be involved. I think Snape is just... there's not levels, there's not peaks and valleys. Sometimes he's evil and sometimes he's not. He's consistently mean.
Yeah.
Therefore, I don't think it's necessarily more sinister or has deeper connotations. I think he's just consistently mean.
I agree. I do. So after that, they do go to the Owlery, and this is where we have one of the more fun interactions, I think. It's very, sitcom-y. The way it works, it's
it's a farce.
Yes, and this is I guess I'll just read it.
Okay.
Just go with that. So they're in the Owlery, and it says, "Shh," said Hermione suddenly. Somebody was climbing the steps up to the Owlery. Harry could hear two voices arguing, coming closer and closer. That's blackmail, that is. We could get into a lot of trouble for that. We've tried being polite. It's time to play dirty like him. He wouldn't like the Ministry of Magic knowing what he did. I'm telling you, if you put it in writing, it's blackmail. Yeah, and you won't be complaining if we get a nice fat payoff, will you? The Owlery door banged open. Fred and George came over the threshold, then froze at the sight of Harry, Ron, and Hermione. What are you doing here? Ron and Fred said at the same time. Sending a letter, said Harry and George in unison. What? At this time? Said Hermione and Fred. Fred grinned. Fine. We won't ask what you're doing if you don't ask us, he said.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of those, how did this not get into the movie? How is that? We'll talk about it when we do the movie, obviously. But this is such a cinematic, jokey, on-screen thing. You can just visualize this whole thing.
Yes, and I like that every time somebody talks, it's a different pairing of people. Yeah. Our trio, it's one of them and then one of them and one of them. Mm-hmm. And then Fred and George, it's Fred, then George, then Fred, alternating back and forth, having dual conversations saying the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, the beats are very well done in a very silly way. I've just always enjoyed that, of being that's a nice little thing to throw in here.
I like it.
Mm-hmm. So what do you have for notes here?
So one of the things I really noticed when Harry was sort of defending Mr. Crouch and what he was saying, and Ron's kind of trying to blow him off, but he was acting all crazy and you can't really trust what he was saying, because part of the conversation Crouch was trying to have was about Voldemort, right? Mm-hmm. And Ron, in general, anytime anybody ever talks about Voldemort, kind of freaks out. It's well, it's probably crazy. That's not, it can't be that. Oh, no, it can't be that. I really like that Harry noticed that Crouch was sanest when he was speaking about Voldemort, that he was the most coherent during those times, because that seemed to be the important pieces of information, and he picked up on it. And I'm glad that not only did he notice, but that he even had the sense to point that out to his friends. No, really, we need to not discount that, because that was the part that seemed important.
Right. Yeah, the most... In Harry's estimation, the most valuable pieces of information garnered were what seemed to have been the times where he was the most lucid, where Crouch was the most lucid in his thought and actually present, not just stuck in some reverie, which, I think that's good for Harry to point that out specifically, saying, I think there might be more to it. This is what I saw. And there's plenty of gibberish in there, but there's more than meets the eye.
Yes. All right. So did you have something else about Fred and George, though, before we jump?
I did. So they kind of have this blackmail thing going on, right? And they play it off as, oh, I'm just kidding. One, I don't know if they're just kidding. And two, the way Harry and Ron kind of talk about Fred, and Hermione as well, talk about Fred and George doing something illegal to start the joke shop. I don't know. Ron seems genuinely concerned about this because, and I like the little interaction between he and Harry on, they're really obsessed with making money. I found that out when we were And Harry's just like, when we weren't talking, like, it's fine. Like, let's move past that part. Like, he just takes that,
Right.
like, that's not a thing, Ron. Like, let's just get to the point. But what are your thoughts on Fred and George potentially doing something illegal? And Hermione very well states that, these aren't just silly school rules. This is the law. Is that a different bar for the twins to judge by?
That's a good question. I don't really know. Part of me feels like, oh no, the twins, they would never do anything illegal, right? But then, like, you're assuming that it's like that whole, oh, well, my kids would never do anything wrong because they're raised in a good family, and everybody screws up, everybody makes mistakes, and everybody has you know what I mean? Even kids, quote unquote, with good parents or have, straight-laced brothers and sisters, that does not mean that they can't do something illegal. We know Fred and George are ones to bend the rules and circumvent, the authorities to try and get what they want. They've done that for years, right? And I think they're not ones who are going to go outside of the law, like, maliciously, but they would bend the rules.
Or efficiency or effectiveness kind of thing.
Yes, like, okay, I know this is a law, but I'm going to look at it more of as a guideline. I'm not hurting anybody. I think they probably have, like, a moral code, right?
Yeah.
If it's not going to hurt anybody, if it's not going to do anything that, I just keep going back to they're not going to murder anybody. They're maybe not stealing from anybody.
They're not becoming mobsters.
Right, but might they do something that's a little bit outside of the realm of the law area? Sure, I could see it.
I could see it as well. And I think you said it very well. It's if they were going to do something like that, it wouldn't be malicious. They would go out of their way to make sure it doesn't harm somebody. And there's always the good thought of, well, just because you don't see who it harms doesn't mean it's, a victimless crime. But still, like, in their, 17-year-old brains, 16-year-old brains,
right?
I could see that they're actually, at this point in the story, probably pretty close to 17. Because they were just a couple months away from being 17 at Goblet of Fire chapter. Anyway, I think it'd be reasonable for them to say, this is going to do the job that we need it to. It's not going to directly hurt somebody. Mm-hmm. There's no harm in it. Let's just do it. And obviously one of them, we don't know which one, is hesitating to do it. I would guess that it's George hesitating to do it, but I don't know. I always think that too. I don't know that for sure, but it's I don't know. I think it's a really interesting light on what they potentially have going on that we really haven't seen before.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. So, can I talk a little bit about the letter, sort of the letter, and just in general, an observation I had about Harry?
You sure can.
Okay.
We're here to do that, specifically that.
Oh, okay, good. I was trying to figure out how to, segue into it, and there was no segue, so I'm just jumping. Everyone keeps yelling at Harry for talking to Crumb. Hagrid, in the last chapter, talked to Harry.
What are you talking to Ruddy Crumb before?
Right. That was pretty rough. And even Dumbledore had given him a funny look when he said, oh, I was off talking to Crumb. Dumbledore kind of stopped and gave him a look. This was all last chapter. But then in this chapter, Sirius, in the letter, starts yelling at him also. And it's, what do you think you're playing at? Walking off into the forest with Victor Crumb. And I think Sirius's slant is a little more like, why are you walking off with anyone at night? But the fact that he's specifically saying oh, you shouldn't be talking to Crumb. Don't do that. Why are they all giving him so much trouble for it? I don't know. It's not a fully formed thought, but it just didn't sit well with me.
Yeah. And with that, I want to pick a bone with Hermione's reaction to the letter as well. She kind of lays it on even thicker to Harry, where it's not, I don't know if it's really needed. She basically says he's worried because Harry's response is, who's he to lecture me about being out of bounds? Which, I get it. He's indignant about the way school was when Sirius was there, hanging out with his buddies, running around the castle and all that.
Right.
Free reign, sure. Harry feels left out because that's not an option for him, right? I mean, he's a kid. That's not an option for him. He still does it, but he always gets completely ridiculed for doing these things or wanting to. And he's a little frustrated that Sirius, of all people, would say this. I think Sirius's heart is in a good place with the, hey, don't go out and about.
Right.
But, Hermione jumps on him too, and she's like, he's worried about you, just like Moody and Hagrid, so listen to them. And, I mean, Harry makes some really good points of, well, whoever attacked Crumb, and or potentially Crouch, whatever's going on here, I was right there. If they're trying to kill me, if that's really the thing going on, just do it then. Like, just do it right there.
Right.
They didn't have a problem doing whatever they did to Crouch, if it was Crouch. We don't know. But, like, I think he's bringing up valid points of this is, like, the most bait, Harry Potter position, isolated situation he could be in. And they didn't, whoever is behind whatever's going on didn't take him out. I'm with Harry. I don't think he should have to worry that much. Like, get off his back.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Because at least in terms of like the teenage perspective of nobody's hurting yet, and they could have lots of chances.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
See, I got a chance, and nothing happens. So, yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
And I'm really, again, not discounting Sirius's heart being in the right place, or Hermione, or Moody, or Hagrid. Like, I think from their perspectives, yeah, do whatever you can to protect him. But in his, I can see where he's coming from. I'm fine. Like,
right,
I'm good.
And I'm not a little kid. Like, I don't need you.
Yep.
And see that too. Let's talk about Moody. So we run into Moody there, right? Like the day after they sent the letter, and they go talk to him really quick to see if he ever found anything about Crouch from the night before. Any thoughts about the conversation they have with him, whether about like them asking questions or, anything along those?
Well, I think Moody is a pretty strong character. He seems to care about these kids, and I like the compliment he gives to Hermione about you're another one who might think about a career as an Auror. Your mind works the right way, which makes sense. She's very logical. She sees things through, doesn't get super emotionally entangled to, blind herself from figuring out problems. And I think it's kind of funny that Ron feels a little left out that he doesn't get told that. I mean, I can see where he's coming from, and but it's just kind of he definitely gives a good idea, and even Moody kind of gives him credit of like we can't rule out kidnap because we don't, because Ron brings up that someone could have flown in on a broom and flown off with him, and it's just funny because it says looking hopefully at Moody as if he too wanted to be told he had the makings of an Auror. On Moody's perspective, it'd have been awkward to tell both of them that, like, in back-to-back sentences. But
right,
I don't know. I think he gives Ron enough to be satisfied, I guess.
Yeah, I think like he gives Ron just enough for Ron to be able to think, oh yeah, me too. It's okay. So I don't necessarily think Ron's going to feel left out anymore, but I think he wanted the validation of, but like, I help. I can be part of that.
Right. Yeah, and they also bring up the, practicing for the upcoming third task, and again, Ron kind of says, we helped, me and Hermione helped, and it's kind of right along with that, like, ooh, don't forget about me, like, don't forget that we were involved too, like,
right. Like, I need some validation.
Yeah, he doesn't get it. He never gets validation, so I'm actually okay with Ron being a little whiny here. Like, you know what? I'm fine with it. Normally I wouldn't be, but I'm good with it.
Yeah, I'm with you. That sounds good. All right, let's go to Trelawney's class.
Yeah.
Do we want to do the comment about Trelawney or the comment about the dream that happened in Trelawney's class?
Go with your comment on Trelawney specifically.
So I feel bad for her, which is an odd feeling, because she's not my fave. But I do feel bad because here we are. Someone actually had a real, live, honest-to-goodness vision in her class. Probably due to all of the vibrations and scented ambiance she creates. So good job on her.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's why Harry had such a vivid.
Yeah. Credit where debit is due.
Exactly. And yet she gets nothing from Harry. He gives her nothing. She knows he had a vision. She's sure of it. She's right. He did. And he gives her nothing. She's so disappointed. I feel so bad. Like, she's just so disappointed. And rightfully so.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought about that much. At least on this rereading, I wasn't really thinking. That was just kind of funny that she was like just not getting any credit for it. What? Because Harry doesn't care. He's like, no, like, you're a fraud. I don't care. I'm just gonna go do the one thing. And I really liked his line of, I just need a headache, a cure for a headache.
So I'm going to read the scene just because thinking about it from the perspective of Trelawney and how excited she is about this.
Right.
Harry opened his eyes. He was lying on the floor of Professor Trelawney's room with his hands over his face. His scar was still burning so badly that his eyes were watering. The pain had been real. The whole class was standing around him, and Ron was kneeling next to him, looking terrified. You all right? He asked. Of course he isn't, said Professor Trelawney, looking thoroughly excited. Her great eyes loomed over Harry, gazing at him. What was it, Potter? A premonition? An apparition? What did you see? Nothing, Harry lied. He could feel himself shaking. He couldn't stop himself from looking around into the shadows behind him. Voldemort's voice had sounded so close. You were clutching your scar, said Professor Trelawney. You were rolling on the floor, clutching your scar. Come now, Potter. I have experience with these matters. Harry looked up at her. I need to go to the hospital, Wing, I think, he said. Bad headache. My dear, you were undoubtedly stimulated by the extraordinary clairvoyant vibrations of my room, said Professor Trelawney. If you leave now, we may lose the opportunity to see further than you have ever. I don't want to see anything but a headache cure, said Harry. And then Harry stood up. The class backed away. They all looked unnerved. See you later, Harry muttered to Ron, and he picked up his bag and headed for the trapdoor, ignoring Professor Trelawney, who was wearing an expression of great frustration, as though she had just been denied a real treat.
Nice job.
Poor Trelawney.
Is it? Yeah. No, I'm teasing more than anything.
Right. I in no way disagree with how Harry handled that. But if you look simply from her perspective, like, that's as good as it gets for her.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and, like, she literally could, like, analyze this with the class and make it, like, an exercise. Yeah. You're like, good teaching opportunity lost.
On this, yes. Yeah. Nope, I feel bad for her.
Yeah, that's good stuff. But, we do have a Harry dream alert. You know, we've pointed these out each time he's had a dream.
That's true, we do.
So the dream essentially encapsulates Harry flying off on an owl. He sees this, you know, kind of we talked about with the illustration, this house like near a hill. We fly into a conversation between Voldemort and Wormtail. We find out that somebody's dead, and because of that, a mistake that Wormtail made is like, it's okay because of that. And Wormtail feels like he's about to get, I don't know, exonerated or, you know, like let off the hook, but he still gets punished physically, at least. He doesn't get fed to the snake like he was originally thinking was going to happen because of whatever this mistake is, but he still gets I believe it's a Cruciatus curse put on him to kind of seal the deal of, you know what, punishment is still owed.
Well, apparently he screwed up.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, going into this chapter alone, the title kind of gives away that there's going to be a dream alert, right? You know, it's
okay, we'll give you that one.
It's a little on the nose. There may be a dream in this chapter.
That's really funny.
So Harry comes out of his dream, leaves the classroom, and goes down to Dumbledore's office,
where he overhears a bit of a conversation because Fudge is there, which is weird.
Even before that, when he tries to go through the door, because he's been there before, and he knows, you know, last time it was Lemon Drop was the password to get past the gargoyle, and so he just starts spurting off different candies because he doesn't know what it is. Apparently it's changed. It ends up being Cockroach Cluster, and Harry's like, I was kidding. Like, that was a joke.
How is that really a password?
Right. I thought it was pretty funny. And
do you think that other headmasters also used different types of treats and sweets as their passwords, or is this just a Dumbledore thing?
This seems like a Dumbledore thing to me.
Like, I just wonder if there are, I mean, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, so feel free to pull me back out. All of the passwords for Gryffindor Tower are usually like 2-word password. Like, I wonder if there's some sort of
syllable requirement,
criteria, or just criteria. Like, all the Gryffindor passwords will be formatted like this or be within this realm of topics. I'm wondering, like, does the headmaster all have to be food items, and the headmaster gets to choose from there, or is it much more open-ended than that? It can just be anything, and Dumbledore happens to have a preference for food and candy structures.
Yeah, I would think it could kind of be whatever you want it to be, or at least whatever the headmaster decides it to be.
Right.
It seems very Dumbledore-ish for it to be sweets, candies. Yeah, he's got a proclivity for enjoying candies. So I guess I just, from the knowledge we have, assume that's just a Dumbledoreism. But
I mean, I do too. I just wonder if like they always have to be food and he chooses it to be. Like if there's any criteria we're missing on how passwords are chosen at all. That's all.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Maybe.
The Dumbledore, or the Dumbledore, the Gryffindor ones are usually kind of random-ish, fitting within the context of the story a lot of times. But I mean, like Balderdash, compared to some of the other ones, I don't really see much of a trend. I guess I don't know. Maybe further research is needed.
Okay.
I have them all highlighted, so don't worry.
Good for you. Someday.
For trivia question purposes at the end of books.
Seriously, if anybody's paying attention to these episodes before we get to our big trivia at the end of the book, they really should be paying attention to the things that you notice. You point out things with numbers. You point out passwords.
Those all have dates as well.
Yes.
Those all get orange highlighted in my Kindle.
Oh
man. So yeah, as you were saying, Harry overhears a bit of a conversation behind the door in Dumbledore's office. Fudge is in there, Moody's in there, and Dumbledore is in there, and Fudge is kind of questioning, like what happened. He's getting, the lay of the investigation, I guess. Boots on the ground, doing some of the dirty work himself, right? Good thing that the Minister of Magic is the one involved in this investigation. Seems a little odd to me, but
doesn't make me question the ministry structure at all.
Right, right. But he's questioning. He says, so you found, Crumb out beyond the Beauxbaton carriage, and he clearly insinuates that Madame Maxime maybe was involved and is pretty prejudiced in. Again, it's very similar to what we've seen from like Ron's perspective on giants. It's very the societal norm of his perspective. I don't think less specifically of Fudge necessarily because of what he does here. It's not surprising to me that he does this, I guess.
Not surprising.
I really, really love Dumbledore's reaction to it. Do you have any thoughts on that whole interaction there?
No, just that, like, Fudge strikes me as an interesting and not in a good way character, because way back in book 2, even when, like, we have to take you, Hagrid, just for precautionary sake. Like, innocent till proven guilty is not really his MO, right? We're just going to assume you did it and throw you in Azkaban for something that we aren't even going to give you a trial for or something.
Be seen doing something.
Right. And then now, like, we're going to automatically jump to the conclusion that was Madame Maxime. Like, I question some of his decision-making skills.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he do the things he does? Is it really in the best interest of the people? Or is it, again, like you said, is it how it looks for his own political gain? I don't know. I'm hesitant when it comes to that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, overall it seems like status quo is the only thing that matters, at least from what we've seen from him. It's just, you have to be seen being productive in some way. Whether or not it's correct, we'll figure that out later.
Right.
And seems very much ask for forgiveness after you make a mistake, as opposed to let's just be correct. Like, let's just be technically correct instead of guess, check, and revise, which I think is his
problem-solving strategy.
Yeah, guess, check, and revise. Guess, check, and revise. And by check, I mean throw everyone in Azkaban until proven otherwise.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Just to make it look like I'm doing something.
Right.
So.
Quick check-in on the chat. Thank you to Peter Griffin and Shannon Thompson for joining us. We appreciate you guys joining us on all of our live stream recordings for the podcast that must not be named. So if you're a podcast only listener, please feel free to join us whenever we record these. It's usually last minute that we throw it up there, so follow us on Twitter to get that. Yeah, to get that notification. You got anything else? Go. Sorry.
You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell on YouTube, and that'll send you a notification as well as soon as we go live.
Very, very good point. Any final big notes on this chapter you got there, Melissa?
I really liked that it was short.
Yeah, it went really quickly, right? I feel like they've been pretty long lately. So
yeah. So I appreciated the brief interlude this chapter provided for us.
Yeah. Was that last chapter? Oh, last chapter was 29. You're right. It was this chapter that we had notes prepared for last time that we didn't get to. But yes, this was brief, needed.
All right, Luke, so we're going to jump into what is turning out to be one of my favorite sections of this show, your 5 burning questions.
All right, question number 1. What are the chances of Snape actually being able to turn into a bat?
Well, I figured if he was a registered animagus, then Hermione would have known about it, right? Like, that seems like something she...
Potentially. I mean,
If anybody was going to know, it'd be Hermione. I'm sure it's like in a Hogwarts of history because it lists all the teachers. Who knows?
Right.
She knows all the things. I would say it's very low on the likelihood.
If he could do an animagus, would you be surprised if it was a bat?
Nope, not at all. That is a perfect animagus for him.
Yep, I agree. Question 2. How did Crouch disappear? I guess that's a bit loaded on whether or not you think he was involved in attacking.
Either way, he's gone, right?
Yeah.
So either he attacked Crumb and wandered off again and never fulfilled his point of actually seeing Dumbledore, or he was snapped by Thanos and is now missed.
Okay, both valid options.
Right, absolutely.
Question number 3. What blunder could Wormtail have made?
Making the wrong kind of smoothie.
I was gonna go with like oatmeal. I think we're similar skill sets.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That whatever Voldemort looks like right now, probably no solid foods. Is I think our main takeaway.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that is pretty clear.
Question number 4. Who died?
I just want to quote Rent are Ekita, Evita, which is a line from the song Bobby Boem. So, who died? I don't know.
Because we knew early on that Bertha Jorkins is already dead. We know that from the Riddle House chapter, right?
Yes.
Are they still talking about that?
I mean, it's May, so I'm sure they've gotten over it by now. That was last July.
Yeah.
Or August. So I probably not. I don't know. Maybe they found another random witch on the road.
Yeah,
that's what I'm gonna go with.
Or maybe someone came into the house similar to like Frank Bryce, and they just polished him off.
Done. Random.
All right. Question number 5, and the last of the 5 burning questions for this chapter 29 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Should the trio have enlisted the help of Mrs. Norris for the stunning spell practice like Ron suggested?
Okay.
You know my answer.
I think in terms of finding a different target than his friends, it would have been like an interesting choice to grab Mrs. Norris just so that Harry didn't have to keep stunning Hermione and Ron. However, in the interest of self-preservation, Mrs. Norris would not be the best volunteer for that, simply because that would put them on Filch's hit list, and that's not a good place to be. So, probably not.
You don't need more enemies lurking around the corridors.
Exactly. Now, I think they should, I don't know, ask Dobby. He'd do it, right?
Yeah, that gets into a whole, is it really
I
consent?
know, that's wrong.
It's always weird with Dobby. He would be all for it. He would absolutely do it.
Not Dobby the house elf, just, their buddy Dobby.
I know, but, it's still...
I know.
Where does that line? Because it's still tough on Dobby to know where that line is sometimes of being free. So
then they should get volunteer first years.
Perfect. That's the answer. Okay. Signed, sealed, delivered. There's the official response of the podcast that must not be named. I think first years. I really do. And yeah, sure, stun the cat. That's fine. At least once.
I mean, I'm not saying use it for target practice, but not using it on the cat at all is not an option. I definitely think use it on the cat. I'm okay with that.
Do it in the halls secretly, just out and about. Not drag the cat into the room where they're clearly doing this. Just do it. Just
once in a while. Bing.
Bing. Oh, that probably wouldn't go over well either. But
probably not.
I think the sign-ups for first years is a good choice.
All right, let's jump into some chapter superlatives. Luke, what was your favorite line?
Oh, I had a couple. I have an honorable mention for the "Can't we kidnap Mrs. Norris" suggestion from Ron. Let's stun her for a bit, or you could use Dobby. Harry, I bet he'd do anything for you. I'm not complaining or anything. He got to his feet gingerly. Ginger. Is that really a redhead joke for Ron there? Come on. Rubbing his backside, but I'm making all over. That's my honorable mention, runner-up, if you will. My real favorite line in this chapter is, "Or else, well," Fudge sounded embarrassed, "well, I'll reserve judgment until after I've seen the place where he was found, but you say it was past the Beauxbaton carriage. Dumbledore, you know what that woman is. I considered her to be a very able headmistress, and an excellent dancer," said Dumbledore quietly. "Dumbledore, come," said Fudge angrily. "Don't you think you might be a bit prejudiced in her favor because of Hagrid? They don't all turn out harmless. If, indeed, you can call Hagrid harmless with that monster fixation he's got, I no more suspect Madame Maxime than Hagrid," said Dumbledore just as calmly. "I think it is possible that it is you who are prejudiced, Cornelius."
Oh,
I love it. I think that is a really, really good, what do they call those? Like, just like a sly, sick burn, like subtle burn. And yeah, because I agree with Dumbledore that, yeah, even if Dumbledore is prejudiced in favor of him, like, it's still better to treat them as decent human beings and not the bad side of the bad version of prejudice.
Right, like be prejudiced in favor of like always looking for the positive and giving the benefit of the doubt. You don't need to always assume that people are bad and evil just because, well, they look different or
many reasons. Yep.
Yes.
Well done,
all right.
Albus.
My favorite line is, "No one's tried to attack me all year," said Harry. "No one's done anything to me at all, except put your name in the Goblet of Fire," said Hermione. And I just think, I know we talked about how maybe Hermione was laying it on a little thick, but for me, I don't think it's bad to be reminded, like, this all started because of somebody. We still don't know who, and yes, you're doing fine. You're doing great, Harry.
You're doing great, Harry. You're doing good.
But at the end of the day, somebody really did do something to you. Don't forget that.
I will say, my own personal headcanon, Harry is Abby on the podcast that drinks and knows things. He is the first-time watcher of his own story. So I like the fact that we can call out, "Harry, you're doing great. You're doing good, Harry."
Harry.
Oh, that's good. That's good cross-branding right there. Nice job, team. Can you hear me?
Interlude?
No, because we have to do chapter MVPs.
Oh, I forgot about the chapter MVPs. See, I told you I am not with it today.
Happy Mother's Day. You've earned it.
Yay. All right. MVPs. We have them. Who's yours?
I'm going to give it to Albus Dumbledore. A lot for just that final line there. I thought it was good to put Fudge in his place to hopefully move some of the wool from his eyes of Fudge's own prejudice here. He just blatantly calls him out on it in a not combative way. You know, I think he's just very analytical and straightforward with, you know, I think they're normal people. Maybe you should try that.
Try being normal. See how that works.
Try treating people like they're decent. Let's start there. Yeah.
Right.
I really liked that interaction. How about you? Who's your honorable mention?
I went with Professor Moody.
Reasonable.
One because of the conversation he had with the kids and really was complimenting some of their detective-y skills, whether he was true or not, or even if he was a teacher who was just sort of, sometimes I feel like that. Maybe he was just saying those things to make them feel good, but they're like, oh, these kids, okay, sure, I'll tell them that. But I don't really think he did. I think he really was impressed by their sleuthing abilities. But also at the end where he, you know, like the whole Potter wants to talk to you. He's standing outside the door. Just that idea that we're going to move this along and because this is probably important.
And the fact that he didn't like rat Harry out right away when he stands at the door and like stop that conversation. He knew he was there the whole time. He let him hear, right? He basically was the gatekeeper for Harry being involved in that conversation.
Yes.
So I liked that too, for sure.
Well, folks, it looks like that wraps us up for chapter number 29. You can find us on Twitter if you want to talk to us between now and next week. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Not Named Podcast. You can send us any questions or thoughts that you have at our email, notnamedpodcast@gmail.com. You can find this show and all of our shows on our website, thepodcastthat.com. If you want to help us out, go ahead and hit on the support us page there. My favorite link right now is the TeePublic store, where you can get a variety of the Podcast That themed t-shirts, such as your very own generic wand company shirt or a hashtag Blame Malfoy shirt. You can get it on mugs, you can get it on phone cases, all kinds of things. So check those out.
Subscribe, like, rate, and leave comments here on iTunes or here on YouTube, wherever you're listening. We see all the comments, we see all the ratings. We truly, truly appreciate it. It helps other people find our show, just like you. Let us know what you like, and let us know what you think we could do better at. Listen to this not named podcast on Radio Public. It is free, it's easy to use, and it does help listeners just like you find and support shows like this one. When you listen to this show or any of the shows at thepodcastthat.com on Radio Public's Android or iOS app, literally everyone benefits. It's awesome. Please use that app.
Join us next week when we discuss chapter number 30.
The Pensive. Stay imaginary.
Thanks.